So again, we can maybe tie this back to the idea that you talked about a little bit earlier there, with personal responsibility, and also with coming in there is the connection with what is known as freedom, basically, and how we become more free, or a sense of that we're more free, because we're all there are certain rules, of course, in this world that we live in. We're even confined to the body, so we can't go where we want or do what we want all the time. So there's a limit to it, as it were. But I see that responsibility and again becoming more aware and all of this, that is connected with freedom, and that is a personal thing. Again, that's not something that you go out and wave placards for. In some instances that help, of course, and changes need to be done, I guess, on that level. But I don't know, would you agree on that this is a personal thing, and that responsibility is connected with freedom?
Absolutely, and I'm dedicated to that, and also to showing that the only kind of freedom that you can really have is attitudinal freedom. Intellectual freedom. That's where it starts. That's the beginning and the end of it. Because in other ways, you're only relatively free, but even a chained man can be free. We're not free. See, legally, physically, right? Materially. We are in a world system that is very much unfree.
That's right.
And as I said to you in so many shows before, unfortunately, sad as it is, when you get into studying the profiles of individuals, you discover that people are scared shitless of freedom. What they really want is freedom from freedom. But, again, let's leave that for other shows.
Yep.
What we have to understand right now is that, yes, the goal is intellectual, attitudinal freedom. People, for instance, you're not going to be able to do anything about good and evil. Those exist as absolutes in the world. Good and evil will be here long after you're gone. What you can do is you can change your attitude towards those realities. You can have a positive attitude towards evil and understand that what it is, just like the ancient Ammonists of Egypt did and the ancient Druids did when they had Horus and Set. They didn't think of them, in the antagonistic ways that later on came about. It was a totally different understanding metaphysically of what Set represented. He represented the cathartic, deconstructive, catabolic, aspects of life, which I insist are absolutely important when you're dealing with the process of enlightenment. That if you think enlightenment is merely only a building up and a having and a getting and a wanting and a desiring and an accumulation, you're in for a big shock. Because it's a deconstructive letting go, cathartic, transformative, mutative thing that's also involved there. And this still hasn't sunken in to the New Age movement or to most of the churches. If we have time, can I read another passage?
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's on freedom. Let me start it though with a quote from the great Nesta Webster in her book Secret Societies and Subversive Movements. She says the final goal. Remember, we were talking about the Anubis going down the Thames. What is the door they're opening for us? Does this lead to a utopia or a dystopia? Okay, well, here's what Nesta Webster said over 100 years ago. She said the final goal of world revolution is not socialism or even communism. It is not a change in the existing economic system. It is not the destruction of civilization in a material sense. The revolution desired by the leaders is a moral and a spiritual revolution, an anarchy of ideas by which all standards set up through the 19th centuries shall be reversed. And I completely agree with this, that it is a war on consciousness. That war on consciousness will undoubtedly involve other forms of action on a physical, economic, religious, theological, theocratic, educational, sociological, etc., etc., even ecological. Look at Al Gore and his little
global warming,
another little freaking cult, another sect of nonsense, right?
Yeah.
You're going to believe that is going to involve many other actions, but never forget that the central hub, the bullseye is this war on consciousness. That's what it's really all about, and that's why it takes so long, because consciousness is not easy for them to chain completely.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? They can do it through drugs and other means, but that's not true slavery. They want you to come to the altar of sacrifice. Dragging you to it is no fun.
That's right, and I was pointing out there that the reason for global war, it's something out there all the time.
Global warming, the terminology, people won't be hard. It'll be difficult for people to understand until they have symbolic literacy. That lots of these terms are very subliminal. They don't just mean external threats. What's really warming up is the psychology of mankind, not the sociology or the ecology. Those things, as Wilhelm Reich was able to show, are articulated to what happens in consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very important for them to direct you out. These are the false magicians, what I call the sorcerers, whose job is to tap a stick and lead you away like Pied Pipers from where the real problem is. The real problem is with psychology. Wilhelm Reich, Viktor Frankl, Carl Jung, you see, the great Alan Watts, all of these people knew that the problem was with consciousness. And any true teacher will always teach you that. The false leader will always teach you its politics, its sociology, its ecology. They will lead you into those things. A little bit of good will be done, but they know that little bit of good is a drop in the bucket. But everybody can pat their back and run for the champagne and go, hey, great, aren't we? Aren't we wonderful? We solved that crime, Until the little Columbo appears and goes, question, sorry, something wrong with this. Throws a stick in the works. What about the bigger crime while you're all congratulating and eating the popcorn? Wait a minute, what about this greater crime that goes unsolved, you see? So anyway, the quote from my book is that I say here that the edifice of the New World Order is almost complete. It has been constructed brick by Masonic brick down through the centuries. Symbolically speaking, the last layer is already in place, and it only remains for the capstone to be set. When the time is right, the architects of doom will finally haul it into place. Once this towering Atonist pyramid of control is complete, the black light of the all-seeing eye will be cast down upon the world's enslaved men and women, marching like sleepwalkers beneath its black shadow. The men and women of the world appear eager to help construct freedom's tombstone, the altar upon which their own hearts will be torn out and offered to the blood-gorged gods. It is true that no slaves were involved in the construction of the real pyramid at Giza. That much has been historically proven. But the virtual pyramid of the Luciferian brotherhoods exists entirely due to slavery, not of ancient Jews and Egyptians, but of all humanity. The unenviable task of revealing the origins and evolution of this greatest of mind control programs, Judeo-Christianity, may be justifiably considered futile in the extreme. However, should but one person be awakened after pausing to read our audacious graffiti upon the walls of our prison house, it is enough. Unlike the priests and popes presently in power, our quest is not to save lives or souls, but to save truth, so that it might nourish and sustain the spirit of humanity from the moment it finally awakens and enters into the world that has long wept, cried, and prayed for its arrival.
Yeah, that's beautifully said.
Well, we're waiting for freedom. Freedom is not about your conscious mechanism. Freedom is an absolute necessity for the true organic process of life to take place. Anti-freedom, or anything that stands against freedom, is anti-life. And as we said in the post-human world, and we've said in one of our early interviews on the future, on 2012, that you see the more and more that the leaders, these dark, toxic people, operate in a dark, toxic, Luciferian, demonic way, the more they're waving a flag to nature, go, come and get me. Because nature is holotropic. Nature is holarchic. Nature is self-sustaining. Nature is equilibrium. The more that you operate out of sync with the natural forces, with freedom, the more that you're almost setting yourself up for destruction. So again, when people operate pessimistically, and of course when you look around in the world and you see so much ignorance, you can obviously feel very downhearted. Please think metaphysically. Please think philosophically. Please think higher than that. That it's remarkable the age in which you're living. And you better stand back and start really observing with the eye of a Kubrick. Start really looking and deeply observing the mysterious movement of truth and freedom. Because they have their own mechanism, they have their own movement, and that movement is sublime. That movement is the most beautiful thing that you can imagine. Watch it come into your life. Watch it come into the world. Don't sit there pessimistically with your head in your hands. Don't look at it's like they say in the movie Lost Horizons, don't look at the bottom of the mountain. Why don't you try looking up at the top for a while?
Yeah.
It's your perspective, your attitude that matters. So never forget this, that attitudinal freedom starts with you. Your perspective matters. You can either sit with your head in your hands and lament, or you can raise up and you can start observing like a person watching a bunch of ants building their nest or whatever, or the actions of a beautiful butterfly or an incredible racehorse. Something incredible is taking place. Pluto is moving, the archetypes are changing, man is questing, revelations are being made. They are pulling their headstone into place, but there's another miracle taking place as well.
Mm-hmm.
And this miracle, you need to have an eye for that as well, to be able to observe and take on board this incredible movement of freedom and truth that has its own particular ordinance, its own particular laws. And you can either live in ignorance of those, and you can avoid it and ignore it and live in the darkness, or you can observe it and, like a small child, start to become educated again into this mysterious movement of truth, virtue, justice, and freedom that these tyrants, these Luciferians, know nothing about.
You said, basically, is the time right, as they want to, as you say, cap their pyramid with the capstone, and the radiance of the black sun, and I guess what you're also saying there is that there is this other event taking place or happening, that both of these kind of streams are converging here at some point. So I guess the question is the time right?
The time is always right. Again, it's not about time, it's about attitude. It's very good that when attitude starts to change, that the timing is right. I believe the time is always right.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you're dealing with a lot of control. You're dealing with the mechanisms of control, and so people need to wake up to that. It's a twofold thing, remember. It's Horus and Set. At the one time, as you're building up and developing your own intelligence, you have to be aware of how these deconstructive forces are working to inhibit you from healing, from true healing, because that's what this is ultimately all about. See, the Druids of ancient times, the ones in Ireland, healing was on their mind a lot. The great catastrophes that we've spoken of, that wrecked the land bridges and destroyed the communities and sent people moving from the west to the east, these were gigantic cataclysms. So the ancient Druids and the Bards, you see, realized that their first duty was sort of to heal the earth. This is, I think, where a lot of the interest in geomancy came about. The ley lines, the synchronic lines, and so on. I think that was partly based on making sure that cities and towns and houses would be placed on, places of geomantic strength.
That wasn't that severely damaged by this cataclysm?
And wouldn't damage the earth.
Mm.
See, it's not like today where all our ports and our cities, are in terribly, terribly geopathic places. And are places that normally would not sustain human life at all. Like, L.A., for instance, jumps to mind, But there's plenty of others. Well, the Druids didn't operate in that way at all. They were very conscious about putting houses and their cities and certainly their religious centers on very, very active places of great power. And this will be found in all shamanic, cultures. So healing is a very important thing. And today's modern shaman is interested in healing as well. He's realized that his own mind, his own spirit has been traumatized and brutalized by the barrage of lies, by the commitment to an inauthentic existence, an inauthentic life. Just in order to do what? What are you doing that for? Just so you can earn a pay packet? Just so you can win the camaraderie of a bunch of other idiots? I mean, tell me what your motive is. So you can just fit in, like David Icke says, so you can just be penned in with the rest of them. What's your motive for being this dumbed down and this tuned off, or this critical? You know what I mean? Well, critical of truth, critical when people try to bring the truth your way, you shout them down or you give a bunch of pseudo arguments. You see?
Yeah.
So the world, the system, people in general are, in a very sick state.
Of course.
And so healing, like I said about freedom and virtue, is a sort of an energy that is always there in the world, but you have to be open to it. You have to want to heal. So this is what the future is all about. You have to want to heal. If you don't, like I said, if you find that you cannot deal with the climb of the mountain, and you find that you cannot deal with what you're seeing below you, or that new vision of reality, then by all means go back to the village, because the number one and number two are going to take good care of you. Just like Patrick McGowan showed, right?
The prisoner.
You're going to have your 3 credit cards. You're going to have clothes to wear. Right? You'll have your maid. And you'll have all the food and the teas and the coffees, you see, and the umbrella for the rain and everything, and the newspaper will, print exactly what they know you want to read.
Yeah.
You see. And then every decade or so, these mad psychopaths that rule you will want another crusade, because remember, they're mad. So crusade